If you're using one of these, you're gonna need one of these. I think we all know that amp modelers and amp sims have become incredibly popular over the last couple of years. And quite frankly, they are my preferred gear of choice because you can get amazing amp sounds at any volume. They come in a tiny package and they're pretty cost effective. And if you're like me, when you play live, you probably just grab whatever cheap DI is available and use it to send to the front of house. With modern solutions, it means we get modern problems. And in this case, a DI may not be the right tool for the job. The reason being is that many of these units, like the IK Multimedia Tonex, the Line 6 HX Stomp, Universal Audio's Dream Ruby series, or the Strymon Iridium, all have 1/4 inch unbalanced outputs. This means that those outputs are not going to be able to withstand the cable runs needed to go back to the front of house. Means you're going to get a degradation of your tone. You could inadvertently introduce phantom power, which could fry your pedals, or you accidentally introduce ground loops and get that really annoying hum. So for example, if you've ever played live and you feel like your tone just kind of falls flat, or you get this buzz that you can't quite figure out, I think this problem applies to you and you're gonna wanna stick around because this is super awesome. And quite frankly, I've had this happen live or when playing at church on Sundays. And so this is why I'm super excited about the Highline. If you're not familiar with Radial, they are known for building rock solid, problem-solving gear, and the Highline is no exception. And I've used many of their DIs before when playing live. However, not every venue is gonna have the top-of-the-line DI for your rig. And I'll even show you guys later how drastic of a difference it makes when we take just any DI box versus the Highline in terms of what it does to your signal and your tone. Now to get into some of the technical specs of the Highline, this is designed to bridge that gap from your pedal board to the PA and deliver your tone to the front of house in a clean and clear way. We also have 2 versions of the Highline in mono and then the stereo version. And both of these units will offer phantom power protection, which means if you're running XLR cables to the front of the house, you're not going to inadvertently pull power back from the board and fry your very expensive pedals. And let's be honest, pedal boards are really expensive, so why not spend a little bit more on the front end to protect your tone and your pedals. Plus, both the mono and stereo versions are going to protect you against ground loops, which can happen when you run unbalanced cables to the front of house. And this is where Radial's premium Jensen transformer is going to be such a big deal. In this case, it's not only going to protect you from that unwanted noise, but it's also going to protect the integrity of your tone. And this is where we'll see the biggest difference when I show you guys later how these sound side by side compared with a DI box and the Radial. And of course, there's more nuanced similarities between both of these pedals, but I'm not going to go over all of them today. You guys can check that out in the description down below. Now, I do want to highlight some of the key differences between the mono and stereo versions because I've personally started using the stereo version every Sunday since I've received the Highline. This is the mono version, and this is going to be perfect for just running your amp modeler to the front of house. Of course, your signal is going to be mono, which means you're going to have one input and one output to the front of house. Whereas the stereo version is slightly bigger, but you're going to get stereo outputs. So if you want to send stereo amps or stereo effects to the front of house, you're definitely going to want the stereo version. And the stereo version is going to feature 2 separate channels, each with its own input and isolated outputs to protect the integrity of your tone. Plus, the stereo version also has a few more bells and whistles. Specifically, you're going to have a sum through button, which means you're going to be able to take your stereo signal and push it mono to the front of house, while then taking another mono signal and pushing it to an amp or a cabinet on stage. This is huge, and I think it gives players a ton of flexibility when playing live. And I would have used this all the time back in my band days because I always wanted to send something to the front of house and have a cabinet on stage. Lastly, the stereo version will have a sum XLR button, which will allow you to take your left and right signal, sum it to mono for those instances where you want to send something mono to the front of house, but still have maybe stereo for your in-ears. Which is actually applicable for the church I play at, where I send a mono signal to the house. The room hears something in mono, but my ears are all in stereo because that sounds way better. All right, I have talked enough. Let's go ahead and dive into some samples. And let me show you how this product physically works, and then you can hear for yourself how big of a tonal difference it makes. All right, everyone, so like I said, I want to practically show us what this is going to look at when we compare just a typical DI box to the Highline. So in this case, the way I've got everything set up is I've got my pedal board here. I use the Tonex for my amps, and then all of that goes into my HX Stomp. My HX Stomp then is going out to our DI box into the Highline. So when we look at the screen here, audio 1 is going to be our DI box, and then audio 2 is going to be the Highline. Let's take a listen. All right, so right off the bat, obviously a big difference in terms of the overall output, and quite simply, that's because our DI box is gonna take whatever our signal is, drop it down to a line level, and in this case, when that gets sent to the front of house, they are going to have to add gain to that, and depending on the board, it may have a really good preamp, it may not, but in this case, it could inadvertently add more noise to your signal chain, buzz, that staticky sound that we all hate. Or you can be safe and go with the Highline, and whatever your output is from your modeler, it's gonna send that straight to the front of house. So real quick, let's just look at our analyzer here real quick, just so we can see the difference in terms of our signal. Honestly, I'm not hearing a huge amount of difference. I'll plug in headphones here and we'll listen through monitors, but my guess is in a controlled studio environment where honestly you've got a lot less variables to worry about, we're probably not going to hear a massive difference. And yes, there may be some tonal quality coming between either the transformer of the DI box, or it could also be the interface that I'm using coloring the sound. But let's do one more test. Let's pop in the headphones and see if we hear any differences. Okay, honestly, now that I plug in headphones, I do hear a bit of a difference. It does feel like audio 1 is just a little darker. It's missing some of that sparkle, that clarity. Audio 2 feels like it's got a little bit more of that. Let's do a clean sample just to hear if that's still the case. Yeah, honestly, there might be a small difference. If I was blindfolded and maybe didn't know between the two, my guess is I would get it right 50% of the time. Really, in this case, in a studio environment, I think a DI box can do the trick. But again, we're wanting something for live use where we're able to go in and control those additional variables, right? We don't know what that power is like at the venue. We don't know what board they're using, if it's a low quality board, high quality board. And in this case, I know that everything that I've dialed in at home is gonna sound exactly the way I want it when I send it to the front of house. So this is where the Highline, I think, really shines. It's gonna be super valuable, especially for anybody that's using a modeler like almost all of us are when playing live now. So with all of that said, if you guys are interested, you wanna learn more about the Highline, check out the link down in the description below. I'll see you guys next time.